Hi, thanks so much for joining me on the Listen Up Girl podcast. This is your daily LGBTQ plus podcast for Tuesday, May 19th, 2026. I'm your host, Zach Randall-Friedman, and today we have 7 stories we're going to cover. The federal government is coming after trans people in new and escalating ways. A Kansas court handed us a win. Research just made a significant breakthrough in the fight against HIV, and so much more. But we're going to start in Texas, where Texas Children's Hospital forced to open Detransition clinic. In Texas, where the nation's largest children's hospital announced a settlement last Friday that has alarmed the entire medical and LGBTQ plus community. Texas Children's Hospital in Houston has agreed to the terms with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and the Orange Convicted Felons Department of Justice. Under the deal, the hospital must open up what Paxton is calling the nation's first ever detransition clinic. It must pay $10 million to the state, and it must fire 5 physicians who previously provided gender-affirming care to minors. So let's be direct about this clinic and what it actually is. It's not something patients are requesting. Research consistently shows that detransitioning is rare, and when it does happen, the primary drivers are family rejection, social pressure, and financial barriers, not regret about care itself. The American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, and the Doctorate Society all classify gender-affirming care as safe, appropriate, and medically necessary. The hospital said it's in a statement that it's settled to, quote, protect our resources from endless and costly litigation. They maintain they complied with all the laws the entire time and produced over 5 million documents during the investigation. One more thing worth knowing, Ken Paxton is currently running for U.S. Senate in a tight primary runoff on May 26th. He announced the settlement 11 days before the vote. The CEO of Equality Texas called it exactly what it is, blackmailing a hospital into creating a resource that nobody asked for. Our next story is HIV functional cure breakthrough. 3 people suppress virus without treatment. Now, some good news that is genuinely hopeful. A significant development in the global fight against HIV published this week. Researchers have reported that 3 people participating in a clinical trial were able to suppress the HIV virus for months without their usual antiviral treatment regimen. The participants were part of a study using broadly neutralizing antibodies, engineered immune proteins designed to target HIV across a wide range of viral strains. This is significant. For approximately 40 million people worldwide living with HIV, antiviral therapy currently requires lifelong daily medication. Stopping treatment typically causes the virus to rebound within weeks. The fact that these 3 individuals maintained suppression for months without their standard regimen points towards what researchers call a functional cure. Not eliminating the virus entirely, but keeping it controlled without the need for continuous medication. Scientists are careful not to overstate the findings. The number of participants is small, and there are many more stages of research ahead before this could become a widely available treatment. But every person living with HIV who heard this news this week deserves to know it. The science is moving in a meaningful direction. This is also a reminder of what's at stake when federal government cuts HIV funding, something this administration has done. Progress like this doesn't happen without sustained long-term investment. Next, the Bureau of Prison tells Senate Democrats no. Critical update on what's happening to trans people inside federal prisons. Senators Ed Markey of Massachusetts and Jeff Merkley of Oregon and Mazie Hirono of Hawaii sent a formal letter demanding the Bureau of Prisons reverse a series of anti-trans policies enacted under a Orange Convicted Felons executive order. These policies ban gender-affirming care for incarcerated trans people, even if they want to pay for it themselves with private funds. Staff are required to use inmates' birth names and pronouns tied to their sex assigned at birth. And trans people have been forced into facilities that don't match their gender identity. The senators warned that these policies may violate federal court injunctions and asked for a written response by May 21st. The BOP responded early. The answer was no. A spokesperson said the policies represent, quote, best medical practice. Every major medical organization in the country says the opposite. Senators Markey, Merkley, and Hirono put their names on a letter demanding basic dignity for trans inmates. The Bureau shuts the doors in their face. We should be paying attention to who showed up here. Unbelievable. How can you put somebody that doesn't identify as one sex, you're putting them in a prison like that? That's insane. You're putting their lives at risk. The mental strain that they must be going through is beyond, like, this makes no sense to me how you can treat humans like this. We continue with Kansas court blocks trans care ban, and it's a win. So here's some good news. On Friday, a Kansas State District Court judge temporarily blocked Senate Bill 63, Kansas law banning gender-affirming care for trans minors. Judge Carl Folsom III ruled in a favor of two transgender teenagers and their parents who were presented by the ACLU. His 116-page ruling found that the Kansas Constitution's guaranteed a personal autonomy and a parent's fundamental right to make medical decisions for their children. Likely means the law is unconstitutional under the state constitution independently of federal law. That distinction matters. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled last year that states can ban this care under federal constitutional grounds, but a state can offer stronger protections, and in Kansas, this judge says it does. Attorney General Chris Kobach has announced he'll appeal, calling the ruling judicial activism. The fight is not over, but today these two kids get to keep seeing their doctors. Our next story is in Japan, where Japan's high court rules non-binary exclusion is unconstitutional. So let's go international because this ruling that matters globally. Japan Osaka High Court issued a landmark decision on May 8th, finding that the country's national family registry system, known as the Kioski, violates Japan's constitutional equality protections by recognizing only male and female as gender options. The case was brought by a 50-year-old non-binary person from Kyoto Prefecture who petitioned to have their registration changed from eldest daughter to gender-neutral term. The High Court upheld the lower court's denial of that specific request, saying the national system needs consistent legislative reform, not case-by-case fixes. But crucially, the court stated that the binary-only structure violates Article 14 of Japan's constitution, which guarantees protection from discrimination, and declared that gender identity is, quote, directly linked to the individual's personal existence, making it significant legal good. The petitioner's attorney called it a huge step forward for legal recognition of non-binary people in Japan. Japan still does not have a marriage equality, and progress there has been slow, but a national high court explicitly stating that non-binary carries constitutional weight is very meaningful. It puts real pressure on Japan's parliament to act. Next, glad report, social media safety scores hit record lows. I talked about this story a little bit last week, but if you felt like social media has gotten more hostile towards LGBTQ people in recent years, GLAAD's new annual report confirms its hard numbers. GLAAD released its 6th annual social media safety index. With the sole exception of TikTok, safety scores dropped across every major platform reviewed. YouTube suffered the steepest decline, falling 11 points to a score just of 30 out of 100. X, formerly of Twitter, scored 29. And Meta's platforms across the board. Instagram scored 41, Facebook 40, Threads 39, and TikTok held steady at 56, the highest on the index, though still well short of passing. What's driving the declines? Meta's 2020 policy changes explicitly permitted users to describe LGBTQ people as mentally ill or abnormal. Can you believe that? I can't, but it's there. YouTube removed gender identity entirely from its list of protective characteristics in its hate speech policy, and both platforms have scaled back content moderation in ways that GLAAD says have made their environments more toxic for trans and non-binary users in particular. I just have to say, whenever I report any news and I put it on YouTube, if I mention the orange convicted felon's name, I automatically am not allowed to advertise or do much with it. And it is not, that news segment does not get pushed out to other people. So the fact that you can go in and talk about LGBTQ people as being mentally ill or abnormal is insane to me. Totally insane. And finally, Idaho BIT, the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biophobia. So this past Saturday, May 17th, was Idaho BIT, the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. The day marks May 17th, 1990, the day the World Health Organization removed homosexuality from its classification of mental illness. It has been recognized globally since 2005, and this year's events took place in more than 60 countries. This year's theme, At the Heart of Democracy, the framing hits differently in 2026. The Idaho BIT Advisory Group made the point that attacks on LGBTQ plus rights and bodily autonomy have become a go-to tactic for authoritarian and reactionary governments testing the limits of their power, and that our visibility, our resistance, and our instance on being counted is fundamentally a democratic act. After everything in today's episode, the hospital settlements, the prison policies, and the federal investigations, the court battles, I think that framing is exactly right. Fighting for LGBTQ rights is not a side issue. It's the work of democracy itself. So this is the Listen Up Girl podcast for Tuesday, May 19th, 2026. It's been 7 stories. We've showed a lot of progress. Thanks for being here. Share this episode with someone who needs to stay informed, because we all need to stay informed in today's world. Links to everything we covered are in the show notes, and I'll be back tomorrow with more LGBTQ plus news. Thanks for listening.